Recording now. So, your test in government will consist of 19 multiple choice, 3 true false, 3 that you have to write a word to answer, so fill in the blank, and 2 essays. Or, I'm trying to remember if I just have you do one of the 2. Nope, you got to answer both. Okay. So, are you ready to take some notes? All right, question number 1 is going to ask you, what are the institutions that make up public policy decisions for a society collectively known as? That's the definition for the word what? All the institutions that make public policy decisions put together are called the government. Yes, that's the definition of government. So you're going to look for the one that says government to have the correct definition there. All right? All the institutions put together that make public policy decisions are collectively known as government. All right. Number 2, how does government usually protect its national sovereignty? In other words, how does it protect its existence as a nation? What does it maintain in order to do that? Military. Very good. Armed services. Armed forces. All right. The ways in which people get involved in politics make up their political blank. Not parties. It sounds like, starts out sounding like that though. It's got parts at the beginning of it, but it's not parties. All the ways that you get involved in your government is your political participation. Participation. Now, you may get involved in a political party to do that. You may also write your politician. You may vote. There's all those different ways put together as your political participation. What is a linkage institution?
A what?
Linkage institution.
Isn't that how you can, like, get to the government through other means? Like...
Yes, it's a channel through which your concerns can become a part of the public agenda. All right, so it's a channel through which your concerns can become part of the political agenda. Yes?
How do you spell linkage?
It's the word link and then the word age put together. Link edge.
Okay.
Linkage. Number 5, what makes up a government's policy agenda? What makes up its policy agenda? Yes?
Political issues?
Political issues, specifically issues that attract serious attention of public officials and others involved in politics at a given time. So the policy agenda are the serious issues that get the attention of those that have been elected. That becomes the agenda. All right, number 6. As a system, how does democracy function? Yes.
People make the choices and are involved.
Okay, so they select policy makers and organize their government so that the policy represents the public's preferences. That's what you're looking for here. It's not by giving privilege to the most active people or the most informed people or any of those types of things. It's by selecting policy makers, in other words, electing people, and organizing the government so that it responds to the public's preferences. At least that's how it's supposed to work. And in general, it does. What was the little phrase that was used to describe equality in voting? Okay, no? Yes? No. What we're referring to here is the fact that President Trump's vote doesn't count for any more than my vote. Yes?
One person,
One person, one vote. Yes, one person, one vote. All right, so equality in voting was best expressed by the phrase one person, one vote. All right, so which of our vocabulary things here is the principle that says in a democracy, when you choose among alternatives, it requires the majority's desire to be respected. That one is obviously majority rule. Yeah, that one's majority rule. All right, so the principle that says that the majority's desire needs to be respected is called majority rule. What condition occurs when there's no coalition strong enough to form a majority and establish policy? We say the government is gridlocked. There you go, gridlock. Gridlock occurs. All right, the fact that the United States government is more limited and smaller than other advanced industrialized countries is a reflection of the strength of what type of economic policy. It's one of the key 5 things that Americans value. What is our economic policy that makes it so that our government doesn't have to be as big as some of the socialist type countries? It's a French word.
Laissez-faire.
Laissez-faire. Laissez-faire. I'm recording too, so you can go back and catch the first questions that you didn't hear when we were going over them. But we're going over what's going to be on the test tomorrow. The first 19 questions are multiple choice, and there's a few true false, a few that you fill in the blank, and then a couple essays. So we're moving on to number 11 now. All right, we talked about the term collective good. What is a collective good? Magdalena's going to pass this test. Is anyone else planning on passing it?
That which is good for the most amount of people.
Not just the most amount, literally for everyone. All right, so examples of collective goods would be clean air, clean water. Those are things that everyone should have access to. All right, so the question is going to ask you to choose which of the following is a collective good. So you're looking for something that would be something that everyone has access to. And Uncle Bernie has not been elected yet, so a college education is not going to be the one you're looking for here. That is not something everyone has access to. All right, so when the United States did a troop surge in Afghanistan, that was the result of what type of action by the government? Was it an action by Congress? An action by the president, an action by a court decision? Who ordered the troop surge? That's a presidential action, yes. Because the president can control the military and he can send them to different places. What can he not do, though? Declare war. He cannot declare a war. So the reason that he can send them without congressional permission for up to 2 months is because in the event of an imminent strike, he has to be able to act quickly, and you can't do anything quickly in Congress. All right? So he has the right to deploy the troops, but within 2 months, if there's not a state of declared war, technically he's supposed to bring them back. Number 13, what kind of public policy involves the legislative enactment of taxes and expenditures? All right, so legislative enactment of taxes and expenditures. In other words, the government every year has to pass a national blank that tells how they're going to spend money and how they're going to get money. Budget, yes, that's a budgetary choice. That's a budgetary choice. The government's supposed to have a budget just like you and I. Unlike you and I, the government is allowed to keep spending money it doesn't have. Free speech and a free press are essential to which principle of traditional economic or democratic theory? Yes, which we call enlightened understanding. Yes, enlightened understanding. You cannot have the people voting on issues and making decisions if they are not informed. So they need to be enlightened and understand. Now you're going to read later on this year the Federalist and Anti-Federalist papers, which a number of people today would say, oh, you can't teach that in school. Those are way too complicated for people to understand. Those were published in the newspaper for regular people to read. That's how they were originally published. They were in the newspaper. All right, newspapers are supposed to be written at a 5th grade reading level. That's what they shoot for, 5th to 6th grade reading level. Number 15, in the United States, pluralist theory would suggest what? Remember what pluralist theory was? Yes.
Pluralism states that groups of shared interests influence public policy by present organizations.
Okay.
Oh.
It's everyone group of people, not one group dominates policy.
Okay. Yes. So many groups will vie for power, but no one dominates. Yes, that's what it suggests. Many groups have their voice, but none of them completely dominates. This group wins sometimes, this group wins sometimes, this group over here wins sometimes. No one group completely dominates. And that's just because they don't want to admit the Illuminati's real. So. So you didn't get to go to Outdoor Ed with us, so you missed the interesting conversation I had with David Bork when we were driving over. He was sitting in the front seat of my car driving over, and we were discussing politics and how to fix the world and so forth. And he said that we should just appoint him as dictator of the United States, and that would solve the problems. And I said, if you get appointed as dictator, I'm moving to Canada. And he said, you're assuming there would be a Canada. That was his response. So I said, why wouldn't there be a Canada? And he said, because I would annex it and take all their resources and raise their cities to the ground. I'm like, well, what about Mexico? And he said he would turn that into a sweatshop and make all the American factories move back from overseas to Mexico and just turn it into a giant sweatshop for making American goods cheap. It's like, okay, nice one, nice one. But he claims that he would be like Cincinnatius, and once he had accomplished those things, he would step down, and I'm like, yeah, I'm never trusting you to step back down if you get power. Number 16, according to James Q. Wilson, an intense commitment to a candidate, a culture, or an ideology that sets people in one group definitively apart from people in another rival group is the definition of what? If you become so definitively set apart from another group of people, you're moving toward the north or south. What do we call, what's at the north? Pole. Okay, so polarization. Polarization. You're becoming polarized. You're moving to exact opposites where there is no middle ground. And this is part of what we're struggling with in our country. When that becomes too far gone, then you cannot seem to cooperate in any way, shape, or form. And there's a lot of pettiness that goes on with, well, you didn't give me the one little thing that I want, so I'm not going to give you anything, even if I think it's good for the people. Get a lot of that kind of stuff when there's polarization. All right? 17, the set of values widely shared within a society is called the political what? Not climate. Good guess. To start with the C, though, culture. Very good. Ambrose got it. Good. The political culture. The political culture, which is kind of like the climate, it's kind of the same type of thing, is the set of values that's widely shared within a society. All right? So values like freedom are widely shared within our society. Values like, in general, people think that you should not do things that directly harm your neighbor. That's a generally shared value. Okay? Number 18, which theory contends that American society is divided along class lines? Specifically, that the top 1% controls everything. Elitism, yes, elitism. Elitism. Okay, so we've done pluralism and we've done elitism. Do you remember what the other theory was? Hyperpluralism. All right, so which theory argues that special interest groups have become sovereign and the government is merely their servant now? That's hyperpluralism. All right, so hyperpluralism says that these special interest groups have begun controlling everything even though they're not the majority. That's hyperpluralism. Yes?
Would that be like a land as a group, group?
Yes, could be something like that. Uh-huh.
They control all the socials and
yeah.
whether they would do that, even though they don't actually.
Oh.
Yeah, even when it was supposed to be a sports social, they would disappear into the room and start playing piano. Yes, that would be an example of a special interest group trying to control things. All right. The big example that probably pops into mind in American culture is the fact that despite what they try to make it sound like, there is not a majority of people that are homosexual in our country, despite what they try to make it sound like. It's still a minority. All right, then you have to answer true or false questions. Do governments politically socialize the young? Is that one of the functions of government?
Yes.
Yes, that's one of the 5 functions of government. They're supposed to socialize the young. In other words, through the public school system, through having people say the Pledge of Allegiance and sing the national anthem before games and things, they're socializing them to be good citizens, all right? Does the media usually focus on the who of politics rather than the what? Yeah, they're more concerned with who is saying something than they are with what's saying. So in other words, if Trump is saying it, it doesn't matter if it actually makes sense. It's going to be spun in such a way that it's stupid, right? Just because of who said it. Or if you're on the other side, You know, if Hillary says anything, it's going to be spun. Even if she has a good idea, it's going to be spun as if it's bad. All right, they're more concerned with who and what they belong to than with what they're actually saying, the media in general. All right, 22 is the last of the true-false then. During the Cold War, there was a common bumper sticker that said, "Better dead than red." This reflected many Americans' view that they would prefer to fight to the bitter end than to submit to the oppression of communist rule. Is that true? Yeah, that's true. Mhm. They would rather be dead than submit to communist rule. That's what that was saying. Which is easy to say when somebody's not trying to kill you.
Yeah.
All right, then the short answer are you have to fill in the blank. There's 3 of those. 23. Groups with a narrow interest on which their members tend to take an uncompromising stance are known as blank groups. It's a hyphenated word, so it's kind of like 2. I use the example of the abortion issue for me. I don't care if they're perfect in every other way, I won't vote for somebody who is pro-abortion. Single issue. Single issue. That's the word that you got to put on there. So single dash issue.
So these aren't like logic questions, these are just where you actually have the right word.
Actually write a word on a line.
But not a full sentence?
No. No. They are,
The other ones are multiple choice?
yes, the others are multiple choice. These ones here are, there literally is the sentence with a blank, and you write the word on the line on the side. It's that easy. These are pretty easy tests. If you have read the chapter and studied, and just so you know, I'm not going to give you every question every single time. You're seniors and juniors now. I'm doing that for the first couple so that you get a feel for what they're looking for. And then after that, you should be able to find these fairly easily. All right, number 24 then is a fill in the blank. Policymakers stand at the core of the system. They work within 3 policy-making institutions established by the Constitution. Blank, the presidency, and the courts. So what are the 3 branches of the government? We've got presidency and courts. What's the one in the blank? Judicial, or what do we call people serving in the judicial? The House and Senate together is the Congress. That's what the Congress. Congress, presidency, courts. Okay, so Congress is the word you're looking for. All right. Those who are inclined to support a or an blank role for government would argue that intervention is sometimes the only means of achieving important goals in American society. What kind of a role do they think the government should have to accomplish things?
Can you read the last part of that one more time?
Okay. Those who are inclined to support a or an blank role for government argue that intervention is sometimes the only means of achieving important goals in American society. All right, so they think that the government shouldn't just sit back. Instead, the government should take what kind of a role? Active, there you go, active role, an active role. Not passive, but active. So people that say this would say the government cannot just sit back and wait for things to happen. Sometimes the government has to directly intervene and say, here's how it's going to be. All right? For example, when they had made it so that by law it was technically illegal to be discriminating against African Americans, but it wasn't being done in the South, so they took an active role by actually sending troops to the South to force them to adhere to the laws. All right? And it got quite nasty in some places, like when they were forced to accept the first African Americans into schools that had predominantly been all white. They had to send the National Guard in, the military from up north, to make that happen. Yeah, Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
All right, so here are the 2 essays then. The 2 essays are both fivers. 5 things that you have to list. The first one is the 5 functions provided by all governments. What are the 5 functions provided by all governments? And you have to give an example of each of these in the United States. So 5 functions is on page 10 and 11. All right, first one is national defense. What's the example from the United States? Military, okay? Second one, provide public goods and services. Example of that could be schools. That'd be an example of that. Preserve order. How do we preserve order? Judges and FBI and things like that to preserve order, right? Socialize the young. We could say public education for that. Okay, so you could say something like that. Other things like that. Other goods and services might be like the roads that have been put in. Okay, and then the last one is collect taxes. And of course, that one, the United States example would be a 3-letter abbreviation, IRS. The Internal Revenue Service collects taxes for the national government. Or you could give an example of a type of tax. You could say, for example, income tax, or for example, sales tax. Those are ways to collect taxes. Okay? Then the other essay is a fiver, the 5 elements of the American Creed. Which is page 15 and 16, I think. Yes, I think that's right. Nope, that's not it. That's the, there's there, where's that? Here we go. That is starting on page 20 and going through page 23. So the 5 elements are liberty. Give me liberty or give me death. Egalitarianism, individualism, laissez-faire economics, populism. Now, of course, it would be too easy if you just had to list them. So the question says, list the 5 and then say where and in what ways are they shown in American politics. So how do we show liberty? Well, it mentioned the better read than dead thing as an example of people's desire to do that. It mentioned Patrick Henry's give me liberty or give me death. Different things like that would be examples of people's strong desire to stay free. All right. For egalitarianism, it mentioned the Declaration of Independence statement that all men are created equal. Okay? And then we'll do like Animal Farm and amend it to say some are just more equal. That's Animal Farm.
What was the second part that you gave me after name them
And show how it shows itself in the United States. So in the United States, it's shown in the fact that we believe everyone's equal. Okay? Individualism. Individualism is shown in America by the fact that people are allowed to make decisions about where they live, what they do for a living, those types of things. That's individualism. Nobody tells them what to do. In communist Russia, there was a time period, and China did this for a while too, I don't know if they're still doing it, where children at like age 8 were given a test. And that test determined what you were going to be for the rest of your life. If you didn't do well on that test, they said, you're going to be shoveling manure for the rest of your life, or you're going to be digging a ditch for the rest of your life. If you scored well on it, they said, you're going to be a doctor. I don't want to be a doctor. I didn't ask. You're going to be a doctor. And they just assigned you your tasks.
Actually, they have a test, but I went to a bunch of museums in like Wittenberg when I was there in Germany.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I think what they did is when they're a baby, when they turned 1 year old, that was a big birthday, they set a bunch of objects in front of them. And whatever
They started
object
that
they
early.
grabbed was what they were gonna do.
Excellent.
So that's not even that's a 1-year-old, like, what?
That's crazy.
You put a turd out there, and if you touch that, it's like manure shoveler. That's your job. Very good. Okay, laissez-faire economics is the idea that the government should only step into economic matters when necessary, right? And that's shown from the fact that we don't have the national government doesn't control a bunch of industries like it does in some countries. Okay, and then populism is of the people, for the people, by the people. In other words, the idea that we need to be doing what's best for the largest group of people. All right? Ronald Reagan ran under the idea of getting the government off the back of the American people, because he thought that there were too much taxes when he was running, and he said, I'm going to get the government off of your back so that you can actually move forward and do what you need to do. And so he slashed taxes and stuff like that. Especially slashed taxes to the rich people, because that was supposed to magically make money trickle down to everyone else. Didn't completely work, but I still like Ronald Reagan. He was a great president. All right. That's it. We'll see you tomorrow. I'll send you guys the recordings.